All right, hello, Confirmation sponsors and mentors. Today we're going to talk about Habit 3, Scripture. So you can either open up, just follow along the digital way, or if you'd like to open up your binder and take a look that way, you can as well. So the idea here is going deeper with Scripture. So the overall outline is start out with prayer, take a little time to chat about what's happened since the last time you visited, talk about their vision and values, share about your experience with Scripture, ask them to share a little bit about their experience with Scripture, and then tackle this idea of Lectio Divina. Next, you'll talk about the holes that might exist in the habit, then plan action steps before next time and give them any take-home materials. Then you can close in prayer. So for this, make sure you have your leader guide and candidate handouts, Bible, either the book or an app, and writing utensils. So start out after you've kind of opened in prayer, again, whatever type of prayer you choose to open with, and you've talked a little bit about what's been going on in your lives. Then talk about your experience with Scripture. We all have different experiences. Sometimes we've had difficulties, and that's helpful for the teens to hear too, that you've struggled with reading Scripture from time to time, and tell them what's helped you to delve deeper and ways that maybe you want to go deeper into using Scripture. So for me, my experience with Scripture, really I didn't have much exposure other than Sunday Masses until I was a senior in high school, when I was kind of inspired by a non-denominational friend of mine that knew his stuff in Scripture to really delve into it myself. And I started reading the Scripture every day, reading a verse or a chapter from the Bible. It took me about 3 years to get through it all, and I started at one part and jumped around. And so, share those experiences with your candidate and let them know, your journey with Scripture, and that it really is a relationship. And as we get older, our relationship changes. When we talk about Scripture as a child, it's very different than as we grow older and how we delve into it. Then after you guys have had some time to talk a little bit about Scripture, dive into this idea of Lectio Divina. Lectio Divina is really just a way of reading the Scriptures in a prayerful way. And so this is one way to walk through a Lectio Divina step by step. This is kind of a simplified version. Step one, you choose the text from Scriptures. So we have some listed below that you can choose. You might want to choose that ahead of time, so that way you can be ready with that. Then step two, place yourself in a comfortable position. Allow yourself to become silent. So help the teens kind of start to be silent and really be ready to enter into this praying through Scripture. Then turn to the text and read it slowly and peacefully. Encourage the candidate to really listen to the reading and see if anything jumps out at them, something that they really just sticks with them. And you can even take some time to talk about that after some time in silence, reflecting on the Scripture. Then you read the passage again. And this time, you can even ask them to kind of envision if they were in this time, in this place that's in the Scripture. What do they see? What do they feel? What do they hear? What do they smell? And you can talk about that as well. Then you'll read it a third time and really contemplate on what God is inviting them to do in their lives through this Scripture. So here are your suggested readings. Again, this is not limited to these. If there's another Scripture verse that you feel would be really good for the teen that you're working with, then go for it. Use that. Again, go through these ahead of time. That way you kind of can pick out something you think would be good for your candidate. Fill in the holes. Reflect on these points and think of a personal example you could share from one of the two. This could relate back to your experiences of Scripture before, and then ask if they have an example from their lives of way that Jesus has really showed they've come to understand God's character through Scripture, or know God's ways, or really hear His voice. How have they deepened their faith, or how has it changed their lives in some way? Once you've done that, there's a few discussion questions here you can go through of, what is one thing you know about Jesus that could help explain what you need to know about God? What's an area in your life where you need God's wisdom? What's one part of your faith that you're most passionate about? How could Scripture be used to change your life for the better? Again, these are just suggestions. If you have some good discussion questions, if they have some questions, delve into those, see what they have about Scripture. And then some action steps for the next time. Have them choose whether they want to go deeper in study, or maybe pick something from Scripture they really want to obey, or something they want to memorize. And then maybe even if they want to commit to a plan to develop a habit of reading Scripture for their daily lives. So choose at least one of the steps to take there. Then before next time, have them take a look at each of their points in their vision and connect the scripture verse to that. Back in habit 1, you can find my final vision that has verses attached to my points of my vision, and I used like 3 to 4 verses per point, but you really only need 1 or 2. I was just trying to show that there's a lot of different ways that you can connect scripture verses to a point in your vision. So take a look back at that and help them kind of find some scripture verses, so that the next time you meet, you guys can kind of look at how they connected scripture to their vision. Some other things, there's a lot of different Bible apps out there, so suggest to them, if they don't have one on their phone already, download it. Put that into practice each day. Scripture study ideas. If you feel like your candidate would be interested in doing further scripture study, if you have a good resource, suggest that to them. If you don't and would like one from me, let me know. This is a sample scripture study on 1 John 1 through 10, just a few reflection questions. Then this is the handout that you'll give them for the Lectio Divina exercise, and it has all this listed that you have in your guide as well. And then the sample scripture study guide, if you'd like to give that to them for them to try out on their own. So that's it for this habit. Really, this is a habit where when you're doing Lectio Divina, you might want to find a place that's a little bit more private. Obviously, you still need to be somewhat public, but praying through that scripture can be a little more personal, a little harder to do, if you're just sitting at the next table to somebody in a restaurant or something. So think about that as you plan this meeting. But thank you again for all that you do. Know that you really are making a difference in this candidate's faith journey. Thank you, and God bless.